Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. So, my name is Markus Kanerva. I come from Finland, from the Prime Minister's office there. Just want to clarify that I work there as a civil servant, so I don't have any political role. I don't think I've even met our Prime Minister ever, and I don't know where his office is. So, as it has been stressed here today, this is an academic event, and I'm here as an behavioral social sciences specialist. So the Prime Minister's office in Finland coordinates the work of the government between different ministries, and it also has this funny tendency to gather things that don't fit in any other ministry. And so that's why the project where I'm working, that is aiming to promote cultural change in Finland, aiming to make Finland more experimental friendly. That's the reason why it's located at the Prime Minister's office. So, the roots in experimentation are in the government program, actually. We had parliamentary elections in Finland in 2015, and then the leader of Center Party, Juha Sipilä, won the elections with his party. But in Finland we have a tradition to have coalition governments, so we have 3 parties forming the government. So there are 2 other parties with the Center Party. So it's a center-right coalition government that we have today. And they focused in this strategic program on reforms, and also to raise the employment rate to 22%. I know that in South Korea the employment rate is about 60%. The reason why we have been worried about our situation in Finland, which has been below 70, now it's a little bit over 70%, is that, as you learned from Professor Kanga's presentation, we hand out a lot of social benefits, and we need everybody working so that we can finance the system. So some of the reforms, so there are 5 ongoing reforms going on in Finland that you can see on the left side, and then 5 strategic priorities. And one of those priorities is dealing with digitalization, experimentation, and deregulation. Now we are getting closer to where I'm from. So, and under this topic, we have a thing called a culture for experimenting. To define culture is itself quite difficult, and defining what a culture for experimenting means it's even more vague. And well, what we are doing, while we are trying to build Finland to be the best place in the world to experiment. So we're talking about new solutions, being more innovative in the future, to improve services within the government, within the government sector, and also to systematically use experimentation, and to see that we have a legal basis that supports experimentation. We have a team of 4 people working with this topic, and we started the work at 2016, and we have a mandate until the end of this government term, which will be 2019. So introducing a culture of experimenting is what our team is trying to do. Well, naturally, that's something that we have been doing, or people have been doing in Finland, experimenting. You yourself, you are experimenting pretty much every day, or at least weekly with something. Even I do that in my personal life. For instance, well, I have a daughter who is 1 year old, and when I'm trying to feed oatmeal porridge to her, she doesn't like that. She's like, no, 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 Daddy, I don't like that. Then I try to put some sweet fruit sauce on the porridge, and then I try again. No, that's not good. Then I remember that she loves yogurt, so I add some yogurt, trying if this works. Didn't work either. And I have to really think and think. Then I came up with taking a hand mixer and making all these, putting all these three things and mixing it very smooth. And then she loved that, and she was eating that and asking more and more and more. So experimental culture can be about trial and error, can be about attitudes. And that's something that we're also trying to do. But changing attitude, especially changing attitude within the government, unfortunately, can take some time. We have 3 levels that we are working on in the government with experimentation. So there's the grassroots level. We have noticed that you can get support for experiments or for building up businesses. But if you have a very small idea, which maybe needs $5,000 or euros to just check that it works, there hasn't been any type of support for doing that. And especially if it's for social purposes, we haven't had anyone funding that. So that's something that we are doing as actually on the grassroots level. We are giving out money for very small scale experiments. And that's also about democracy, so that we are inviting more people, NGOs, regular people, to participate in building the society. And for those purposes, we have a web platform called Kokeilun paikka in Finnish, in English, something like a place to experiment. And the purpose of that platform is also to share knowledge, but also gain information where we have issues, where we should look into, or what kind of ideas there are to build a better society. On the next level, we build partnerships within government, between agencies, with NGOs, to have a bit larger experiments. For instance, an experiment where what could fit in here is an idea that maybe we should start school days at 10 o'clock, not at 8 o'clock, because teenagers, they're always so tired in the mornings. So why not let them sleep later? Or when unemployed people are applying for their benefits, in Finland they have to indicate for certain time periods if they had been unemployed or if they had been working for some hours. Why not ask them to indicate if they were job seekers instead of being unemployed? Having the idea that maybe being a job seeker is a more dynamic way of seeing yourself than being unemployed. So having those type of experiments would fit in the middle level. And then we have the strategic level. You heard explanations or description of the Finnish basic income experiment. And that's one of those government strategic pilots that we are doing in Finland. And that's one of the 6 strategic pilot studies that we are doing. It is a bit different compared to the other pilot studies, because in the basic income study, we are really using a good method for understanding the effects of basic income or the effects of this intervention that we have. For the others, it's more or less piloting something, understanding if this works within the government. Can we do this? Do we have resources? What kind of learnings we have? Should we go forward with this? For instance, the digital municipality trial, there was a survey carried out by the Ministry of Finance, where they asked from these different municipalities how they see the opportunities or the potential of using more digitalized solutions. And well, naturally they saw a lot of potential savings coming from that. But there is no rigorous evaluation for this program. There are just like our Minister of Local Government and Public Reforms, Mrs. Anu Vehviläinen, is stating there that you municipalities, you should start experimenting more, look for ways to be more effective on this matter. But the basic income trial experiment, that's something that we are really trying to use as an example, how we should evaluate policy ideas in the future. Because the way how we have designed, using having a randomized sample and having a treatment group and a control group, gives the real causality about the treatment. And I personally feel very strongly that that's the way how we should be dealing with new policy ideas in the future. Here I have some experiences that we have got, or some learnings we have got from the basic income trial. With this experiment, a very abstract idea, universal basic income, became much more concrete. And that created a very fruitful dialogue between political parties in Finland, because then everybody had to come out with their better solutions, with their better ideas, how we should reform the social security system. We also learned about government's ability for transformation. There were parts of government that were really quick and to make changes and who were very willing to make changes. But we also learned that there were parts of government that didn't want to be on board with this experiment at all. And that's something that you should keep in mind, that if you don't have everybody on board, it is very frustrating and very difficult even to experiment things. In the Finnish constitution, there's a clause saying that you have to treat people equally, which is very good that it says that. But if you're experimenting, you always have at least two different groups where the other group is getting something different than the other. And that causes some gray hair to randomistas, to people who loves to run randomized control trials. But fortunately, we were able to also find a path to have the Finnish basic income experiment. And also, political ownership and commitment is important. It's quite self-evident that it's important, but that's something that we learned as well, that the winds in the political world, they can change very quickly. Even though you had started something, you may want to do something else while you're doing the experiment. To conclude my presentation, I'd like to introduce 4 big words about experimentations. So, learning naturally is the first reason why you want to do experiments. So you want to learn if something works or not. But also, we are learning in Finland, my team and the Finnish government, how to run experiments. This is something that we've never done before. How to build a culture of experimentation. That's something new for us as well. Failure. Sometimes policymakers think that if we don't get the results that we were hoping for from an experiment, the experiment is a failure. But that's very wrong type of thinking. An experiment is failure only if we don't get any results. It's a very good result to understand that the idea was bad. And also, it's better to fail fast than implement something that will cover the whole nation. Third big word is dialogue. So by supporting these small-scale experiments, as I explained in the beginning, we can create better dialogue. We can find new people with new solutions. But when you have experiments, abstract things become more concrete, and that creates dialogue. The fourth and last big word is decisions. You have to make tons of decisions while you're preparing an experiment. Be prepared for that. But also you have to be ready to act upon the results. You have to be ready to make decisions using the evidence from an experiment. Otherwise, nobody wants to run any experiments if they know that nobody is acting about those. I know you are building great ships in South Korea, so you know something about ships. Social security, that's a big ship. Big ships turn slowly. They turn quickly, only upside down. So start turning the ship now. Don't wait for 20 years before you make the changes. Make the changes now. Thank you.